All right. I'll GM everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this week's DAO meeting. Apologies on the multiple reschedules, just trying to line up between putting all the items for BIP50 into place and some travel schedules and changes there. It's just been a little bit of a tough go when it comes to kind of getting schedules aligned, but here we are. Appreciate everybody that joined. We'll get into the presentation, and everybody knows the rules of protocol by now. If there are any questions, don't hesitate to drop them either in the Barnyard chat or in the chat associated with the voice channel. And definitely do not hesitate to jump in and add any color if you have anything to add, and ask any questions as we go along. Okay, so big items up front, obviously, long list here. Really excited to see BIP50 and all its components passed and implemented. Won't go through the list individually, but yeah, really excited to see how that has turned out. Anybody from the team want to add anything about any specific item or the general implementation? Anything to add? All right, hearing nothing. So as for upcoming and ongoing items, really at this point, it's primarily for the fork migration system, which is still under development, and we'll see a timeline here in just a minute for its updated completion and implementation. Any other questions before we jump from this slide? Questions or thoughts? All right, hearing none. So moving on right into the fork migration system. So the timeline's been adjusted just a little bit, stretched out really to the end of the year. Guy, I don't know if or Breen, I don't know if either of you or really anybody from the dev team wants to talk a little bit just about the process here and what might have driven some of the changes to the timeline.
Sure. I mean, just to take a step back, I think the last DAO meeting was prior to the BIP50 50 launch and L2 migration, which was a huge upgrade that got pushed over the last Tuesday and Wednesday or so. And yeah, just want to give a shout out to everyone involved, lots of whom are on this call. It was, cumulatively, but in addition, probably the L2 migration alone, the biggest upgrade in the history of Beanstalk. Which was very exciting. And, that required ongoing diligence, of course, in the days after. As people saw, there was a couple EBIPs. Fortunately, no funds were at risk for any of them, but feeling pretty good about the state of that migration. So that is all an answer to your question, Rex, which is, what's responsible for some of the timeline delays on the fork migration system. The short answer is that everyone's been or was laser focused on Beanstalk 3. So that is responsible for a lot of those changes.
Completely understandable. And yeah, please don't take, my question as anything other than inquiry, because I'm just watching. Yeah, just watching from the sidelines, it's been really impressive to watch the teamwork to get all the different items in BIP50 in place, and yeah, even working through those EBIPs, really incredible work by the team.
So a code arena audit for the fork migration system is more or less locked in at this point for mid-November. So, there's now some work being done by Pizza Man and Breen in particular for getting that ready for audit.
All right, any other questions about fork migration or comments? All right, hearing none. So we, with fork migration, the only major item on the docket for the time being, we can move right into subgraph UI and other updates. Want to kind of open it up to the dev team. I don't know if there's anything additional that the group would like to cover.
Yeah, sure. So kind of like you just heard Guy mention, following the passing of the BIP, just some other miscellaneous changes and improvements we've been making to the subgraph. One thing in particular that I want to highlight is a change that you'll be seeing probably in the next couple days is going to be like a really large performance improvement to the UI. Been working with Space Bean on that for some tweaks we can make to the subgraph specifically that'll allow the UI to load those charts a lot faster for some of them. So that'll be pretty exciting. But other than that, the other thing I'd like to highlight is regarding the integrations we had with CoinGecko and DeFi Llama. So just like the state of that, updates have been submitted to CoinGecko, both for the Bean token and for the Basin exchange, to get those on there. TBD on when they get around to seeing our message and replying to it. Historically, it's been a bit of a wait, but that's in motion. And on the DeFi Llama side, there's like a few different components, I guess, that have to be implemented separately. And all of them are done and in review. I think as of today, I think 3 out of the 5 are actually approved and have gone live on the site. So, in terms of like restoring the functionality between what was on Ethereum to what's on Arbitrum, at this point, from my perspective, we're just about there.
Great news, Soil King. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and as always, if people have issues with the UI or have trouble seeing their balances or whatnot, if there's any additional bugs that we may have missed or whatever, feel free to reach out or open a ticket. And we have like a create ticket channel in this Discord that you can use to communicate with us.
Yep, absolutely. And I do feel like we are seeing tickets kind of trickle in, but yeah, definitely a great opportunity to kind of highlight that service that's in the Discord. Thank you, sir. Anything else from the team?
Do we want to talk a little bit about the silo and the 1,000 bean requirement for the new LP tokens?
Sure, I think that's a great idea.
Green, I feel like you might have the most context on this one.
Sure. So one of the requirements Beanstalk has before Beanstalk allows you to deposit into the silo is that if the token is a well, there's a minimal amount of beans the well has to have prior to depositing. And the reason why that is because one of the things Beanstalk does is to calculate the BDV of the deposit. And the BDV of the deposit is a function of the reserves in the well. So when the well's in a state when there's low reserves, the BDV calculation is much more susceptible to slippage and manipulation. And the Beanstalk development community decided that 1,000 beans was a suitable amount of beans to be in the well before it can be deposited, and thus Beanstalk is safe from that manipulation. So currently, the Bean wrapped Bitcoin, Bean USDT, and Bean wrapped EigenETH don't have this requirement fulfilled yet, but as people deposit into that, they can deposit into the silo. So if users are having issues with that, that's the technical reason why we designed it in that way.
Yeah, and so just to be clear, that means that if people wanted to deposit those tokens, they would first have to add the LP on the Basin site, and then from there they could deposit the LP tokens. Is that correct?
Yes.
Got it.
Is that requirement captured somewhere, either in the UI itself or in some type of documentation? Just kind of thinking out loud here.
I believe the white paper is not yet up to date to Beanstalk 3, unfortunately. But even in the calculations of BDV for LP tokens up to that point, I believe it makes it clear that with fewer than 1,000 beans in the well, the BDV can't be calculated. It's an ongoing like judgment call as to like what sorts of information like that make it into the almanac versus not. And yeah, at least at the time, before there were any newly whitelisted wells that didn't have any liquidity, it didn't seem like a very important piece of information to include in the almanac. But now that we have all these wells that have very liquidity, perhaps that would be worth doing. Although, as mentioned, now in the EBIP, the requirement is removed, of course.
There we go. Sorry about that. I apologize. For some reason, my Discord shut down. Anyway, apologies. So I'm not sure if.
No worries. I think I misspoke earlier. Breen, can you clarify?
Yes, just wanted to wait till Rex came back in. But
Thank you.
In regards to the bean requirement, in the gauge system as well, there was a requirement that the beans in each well that was whitelisted in the gauge system also needed to have 1,000 beans in the well. And this proved to be a very high constraint, in regards to like the liveliness of the gauge system. So that's one of the things in the EBIP that was changed was removing this requirement specifically for the gauge system. But this requirement is still necessary, in regards to depositing well tokens.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying. That makes sense.
Yeah, so just to kind of put a bow on what was going through my mind, you don't anticipate a situation where, and I mean, obviously, spinning of new wells is not something that is going to happen with extreme frequency, but you don't anticipate situations where that could be a tripping point for someone going through that process.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect a very high frequency in adding new wells to Beanstalk anytime
Yep.
too soon. That's up to the DAO's discretion. But this variable of 1,000 beans is also very easy to change within the code. And if so, if the DAO does see that this requirement is too high and this BDV slippage is not an issue, then of course we could minimize that and allow people to deposit earlier.
Very fair, and I don't see it as any kind of like a barrier to entry as much as just a momentary annoyance or confusion for someone going through that process. But you've covered it well. So, well, thanks. I appreciate that information. Anything else we should cover here in terms of other updates?
Space Bean, I don't know if you're on a mic, but maybe you want to share a couple updates as far as what's new in the UI since Beanstalk 3 launch. It looks like he's unmuting and trying.
I believe
No worries. I
said
mean,
his,
if you
mic
figure
is
it,
not working.
okay, got it. Yeah, no worries. If you figured it out, feel free to interrupt me. I mean, as I understand it, one of the big upgrades from UX perspective is Gen Convert, which has been much discussed even pre-exploit, if I recall. So yeah, now for the first time, it's possible to convert across and from LP token to LP token, which is great, and actually can start to leverage the optimal LP BDV distribution, which was launched in tandem with the gauge system, but couldn't really be leveraged in earnest until now. You can convert from LP token to LP token without requiring the bean price to be X in one pool and Y in the other, or without needing to withdraw and burn your grown stock, which is huge.
Just to add on to Guy's comment, the UI has also been updated for you to update your deposit, which in this case, updating means to update your BDVs of each deposit if it has increased. Previously this was only possible via the convert in the UI. Now the UI allows you to not only update your deposit, but update your deposit individually. One of the issues, previously with converting, aside the fact that you had to convert, is that all your converts would cause your deposits to combine into one deposit. This increased your opportunity cost because you were not able to retain the individuality, of the stock per each deposit. I believe SpaceBean has updated the convert such that you're converting one deposit at a time, so that you do retain your current opportunity cost in the silo, which is a great feature, and I feel like it's understated. These are kind of things that we feel like give a lot of value to the system, and to a regular user, it's very hard to see the value, but we think this ultimately leads to a better usable site and better experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, appreciate
Great job.
appreciate that extra color. And so to kind of ask that back almost as a question, and I noticed that as well. So if I'm performing conversion, I've got my deposits listed. I can go through, and I think it's the radio buttons that are next to those individual deposits. I can hang on to my oldest deposits that have the most grown stock associated with them, correct? And then I could, if I'm gonna perform a conversion, I maybe I'm incentivized to look at deposits that might not have as much grown stock associated, right? Or vice versa, or however a user would want to kind of leverage that flexibility, right?
Yeah. So, maybe just to give an example, let's say you have a set of deposits ranging from, deposit with a lot of grown stock and deposit with very low grown stock, and you're converting from Bean to an LP token. you as the user now have the ability to choose which deposits you want to convert. Do you want to convert your deposit with high stock such that you have even more higher stock, or do you want to convert your deposit with a lower average grown stock such that on average your grown stock is more evenly distributed? Perhaps if you want to minimize your opportunity costs, you might want to convert your higher deposits such that you're still able to withdraw from the silo and minimize the amount of growth stock you lost. That's just one example. Whereas before, converting your deposit would average them all out to one mega deposit.
Fair enough. Appreciate it. Well, this is great stuff. Anything else?
Maybe just to go on a little bit more, although in the past this was technically possible, this was really made feasible with the L2 migration. Doing this on the L1, although it would, give the user a better opportunity cost, the gas in order to execute this kind of complexity would be just so high that the benefit would not outweigh the cost. Now that we're on an L2, we can make these design choices that aren't burdened by the cost to execute them, which is one of the big things I feel like the L2 migration unlocks. And like Guy said before, the L2 migration was a huge engineering feat. Very few teams I feel like in crypto has performed a migration of this scale, and I'm extremely proud of the team for doing it in the best way possible. But now that we're here, we can now make these awesome design choices to further Beanstalk. So I think that's great.
Well said.
Completely agreed. It's even just doing things like claiming silo rewards. I've hopped in a couple times, and I mean, it's nice to see transaction costs in cents, as opposed to dollars or tens of dollars, or we've seen it a lot worse than even that. But yeah, it is kind of it feels like it's a kind of a new era for the protocol. All right, anything else to cover? All right, we'll open it up to the floor a little. I am looking at the Barnyard chat. I don't see any questions. Oh, Base Bean, I am looking at your message now, and certainly no worries about the microphone. Looks like everything that you wrote. Okay, I'll read this quick.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so Space Bean wrote a couple messages. I'm going to read just the second of the three because it has a little bit of detail in it worth repeating. So Space Bean writes, "Sorry, I think my mic's not working for some reason. Thanks for bringing Guy for filling in. One last thing is that the charts and analytics do not currently include data post L2 migration. This will be updated within the next couple days. So be on the lookout."
Yeah, just to give some more context on what Space Bean is saying, given that we migrated to an L2, we kind of have two states of Beanstalk on the subgraph, the L1 state and the L2 state. So Space Bean has been working on marrying the two data points together so that on a UI, you're still able to view historical data, even though in practice that's on the L1 and on a whole new network. Just because we migrated on the L2 doesn't mean we should disregard the entire historical data, nor would that be accurate. So that's the kind of complication behind the scenes on why it wasn't available on day one.
Very fair and good shout out. Appreciate the additional color, and Space Bean, thanks for typing that in too. Any other questions or comments from the DAO? All right, hearing none. Well, this is great. Really appreciate the team hopping on. Appreciate everybody that came through. Really good information about the completion and implementation of the items from BIP 50, and I'm sure more good things to come. So thanks again for everybody's time, and we will catch you at the next DAO meeting.